Today's unfortunate story is about a Lawrence Sigmund Betaker and a Roy Lewis Norris, also known as the Toolbox Killers. They were two American serial killers and rapists who committed the kidnapping, rape, torture, and murder of 5 teenage girls in Southern California over a 5-month period in the year of 1979. Lawrence was commonly described by an FBI special agent, John Edward Douglas, as the most disturbing individual for whom he has created a profile of criminal. Betaker was sentenced to death for 5 murders on March 24th, year of 1981, but died of natural causes while incarcerated on death row at San Quentin State Prison in December of the year of 2019. Lawrence Sigmund Betaker was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on September 27, 1940, as the unwanted child of a couple who had chosen not to have children. He was placed in an orphanage by his birth mother and was adopted as an infant. Betaker's adoptive father worked in the aviation industry, which required the family to frequently move around the United States throughout his childhood. Betaker was first arrested for shoplifting at the age of 12 and obtained a minor criminal record over the next 4 years after further arrests for the same offense, in addition to petty theft, which brought him to the attention of the juvenile authorities. Betaker would later claim that these numerous theft-related offenses committed throughout his adolescence had been attempts to compensate for the lack of love he received from his parents. Although reported to have an IQ of 138, Betaker considered school to be a tedious experience and dropped out of high school in the year of 1957. By this stage in adolescence, he and his adoptive parents were living in California, and within a year of dropping out, he had been arrested for car theft, a hit and run, and evading arrest. For these offenses, he was imprisoned at the California Youth Authority, where he remained until the age of 18 years old. Upon release, Betaker discovered that his adoptive parents had disowned him and moved to another state. He would never see his adoptive parents again. Roy Lewis Norris, the other half of his criminal team, was born in Greeley, Colorado on February 5th, year 1948. Norris was conceived out of wedlock. His parents had married to avoid the social stigma surrounding the illegitimate birth at time. Norris's extended family lived within a short distance of his parents' home due to his grandfather's real estate investments. His father worked in a scrapyard, and his mother was a drug-addicted housewife. He was occasionally lived with his parents throughout his childhood and adolescence, but was repeatedly placed in the care of foster families throughout the state of Colorado. Norris's childhood recollections were interspersed with memories of wrongful accusations while living with his biological parents, and of being neglected by many of his foster families he lived with, frequently being denied sufficient food or clothing. He also claimed to have been sexually abused when in the care of a Hispanic family, later letting the prejudice be held toward Hispanic people originated from the neglect and abuse he endured as a child while placed in the care of this family. While living with his birth parents at the age of 16, Norris visited the home of a female relative who was in her early 20s and began speaking to her in a sexually suggestive manner. She ordered him to leave her house and informed Norris's father, who threatened to subject him to a beating. Norris subsequently stole his father's car and drove into the Rocky Mountains, where he attempted to commit suicide by injecting pure air into the artery in his arms. He was later apprehended as a runaway and returned to live with his parents. Upon his return home, Norris's parents informed him that he and his younger sister were unwanted children and that they intended to divorce when both reached adolescence. A year later, Norris dropped out of school and joined the United States Navy. He was stationed in San Diego in the year of 1965 and was deployed to serve in the Vietnam War in the year of 1969. Although he did not see active combat during his 4-month tour of duty, he was honorably discharged from the Navy after one tour of duty. Mr. Bittaker, within days of his parole from the California Youth Authority, Bittaker was arrested for transporting a stolen vehicle across state lines. In August year of 1959, Bittaker was sentenced to 18 months imprisonment to be served in the Oklahoma State Reformatory. He was later transferred to the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri, to serve the remainder of his sentence. In the year of 1960, Bittaker was released from prison and soon reverted to crime. Within months of his release, he had been arrested in Los Angeles for robbery and in May of 1961 was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment. While incarcerated for his robbery, he was characterized by a psychiatrist as being highly manipulative. The psychiatrist also described Bittaker as having considerable concealed hostility. Bittaker was released on parole in the year of 1963 after completing 2 years of his sentence. In October of the year of 1964, he was again in prison for parole violation. In the year of 1966, Bittaker underwent further examinations by 2 independent psychiatrists, both of whom classified him as a borderline psychopath, a highly manipulative individual unable to acknowledge the consequences of his actions. Bittaker explained to one of them that his criminal activities gave him a feeling of self-importance, although he insisted on circumstantial matters pertaining to his environment and upbringing decreased his ability to resist committing crimes. Bittaker was prescribed antipsychotic medication. A year later, he was again released into society. In the year of November of 1969, Norris was arrested for his first sexual offense. He was charged with both rape and assault with attempt to commit rape. In the later incident, he had attempted to force his way into a car of a lone woman. 3 months later, in February year of 1970, Norris attempted to deceive a lone woman into allowing him to enter her home. When the woman refused, he attempted to break into her house. The woman phoned the police, who arrested Norris before he had the opportunity to cause the woman any harm. Less than 3 months after his offense, Norris was diagnosed with military psychologists as being schizoid personality disorder. He was even given an administrative discharge from the Navy under terms labeled as psychological problems. In May year 1970, Norris, on bail for his latest offense, attacked a female student whom he had been stalking on the grounds of San Diego State University campus. Norris repeatedly struck her on the back of the head with a rock until she slumped to her knees before he repeatedly beat her head against the sidewalk as he knelt upon her lower back. Shortly thereafter, Norris was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. He was committed to 5 years imprisonment at the Alessandro State Hospital, where he was classified as a mentally disordered sex offender. Norris was released from Alessandro State Hospital in the year of 1975 with 5 years probation, having been declared by doctors as an individual who was of no further change or danger to others. Just 3 months after his release, Norris approached a 27-year-old woman walking home from a restaurant in Redondo Beach and offered her a ride on his motorcycle. She gladly declined the ride. Norris parked his motorcycle and grabbed the woman's scarf, twisting it around her neck before informing her he intended to rape her and dragging her into the nearby bushes. Fearing for her life, the woman did not resist the rape. Although the rape was reported to police, they were initially unable to find the perpetrator. However, 1 month later, the victim observed Norris' motorcycle and noted the license number, which she immediately gave to police. Norris was arrested for the rape. 1 year later, he was tried and convicted for this offense and sent to California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo. While incarcerated there, he met and befriended Bitaker. Bitaker and Norris initially became loosely acquainted in the year of 1977. 1 year after Norris arrived at St. Louis Obispo, Bitaker's initial impression of Norris upon his arrival at the California Men's Colony was that he was a savvy individual largely associated with hardened criminals from motorcycle gangs. In addition to dealing in contrabanded drugs, the pair gradually became more closely acquainted and began talking in friend terms when Norris taught Bitaker how to construct jewelry. According to Norris, Bitaker saved him from being attacked by 2 fellow inmates at least 2 occasions. By the year of 1978, the pair had become closely acquaintances, discovering they shared an interest in sexual violence, and with Norris also divulging to Bitaker the biggest stimulation for him was of seeing frightened young women, adding this was the primary reason he had amassed a lengthy record for sexual offenses. Bitaker, who is known to have committed any sexual offenses prior to meeting Norris, himself divulged to Norris that if he ever raped a woman, he would kill her so as to have a witness to the crime. When alone, the pair regularly discussed plans to assault and murder teenage girls after they were released. This shared fantasy evolved into an elaborate plan to murder 1 girl of each teenage year from the age of 13 through the year of 19. The pair vowed to become reacquainted once they were both released. Once the 2 pair were out of prison, from February to June in the year of 1979, Bitaker and Norris picked up over 20 female hitchhikers. The pair did not assault these girls in any manner. These practice runs were merely a way for them to develop a way to lure girls into the van voluntarily and also discovering secluded locations. In late April, the pair found an isolated fire road at the San Gabriel Mountains. Bitaker broke open the lock gate with a crowbar and replaced the lock with one he owned. These 2 murdering sprees included Lucinda Lynn Schaefer, Andrea Joy Hall, Jackie Doris Gilman, and Jacqueline Leigh Lapp. Shirley Lynette Ledford. Ledford's body was found by a jogger the following morning. An autopsy revealed that, in addition to having been sexually violated, she had died of strangulation after receiving extensive blunt force trauma to the face, head, breast, and left elbow, with her sustaining multiple fractures. Her genitalia and rectum had been torn, caused in part by Bitaker having inserted pillars inside her body. In addition, her left hand bore a puncture wound and a finger on her right hand had been slashed. Bittaker would later claim the tape recording the pair had created of Lefford's clear abuse and torture offered nothing more than the evidence of a threesome, adding that toward the very end, Lefford was screaming for him and Norris to kill her. Upon linking Bittaker and Norris to the rape of Robin Robeck, the Hermosa Beach police placed Norris under surveillance. Within days, they had observed his dealing in marijuana. On November 20th, year 1979, Norris was arrested by the Hermosa Beach police for parole violation the same day at the Burbank motel where he resided. Bittaker was arrested for the rape of Robin Robeck. On November 30th, year 1979, Norris attended a preliminary hearing in relation to the September 30th rape. By this stage, Norris was beginning to display visible signs of stress. At the hearing, Norris waived his Miranda rights before Detective Bynum and Deputy District Attorney Stephen Kay began questioning him. Initially in relation to the rape of Robin Robeck, then in relation to the statements given to police by Joseph Jackson and the evidence recovered from his and Bittaker's residence. In February year 1980, Norris and Bittaker were formally charged with the murders of 5 girls. At the arraignment, Bittaker was denied bail, whereas Norris' bail was set at $10,000. Within 1 month of his being charged with murder, Norris had accepted a plea bargain in which he would testify against Bittaker in return for the prosecution agreeing not to seek the death penalty against him. On March 18th, year 1980, Norris pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of second-degree murder in relation to Victim Hall, 2 counts of rape, and 1 count of robbery. Formal sentencing was postponed until May 7th. In return for Norris agreeing to plead guilty and to testify against Bittaker, prosecutors had agreed to seek another death penalty nor life without parole at the upcoming sentencing. Prior to May 7th sentencing, Norris was reviewed by a probation officer who testified at his sentencing that Norris had been accused Bittaker of the actual torture of the victims, and that for Norris himself, the feeling of power and dominance he had over his victims was the main overriding factor, and opposed to having sexual intercourse with them. The probation officer added that Norris never exhibited any remorse or compassion about his brutal acts toward the victims. The defendant appears compulsive in his need to inflict pain and torture upon women. In conclusion, the probation officer testified that Norris can realistically be regarded as an extreme sociopath whose depraved pattern of behavior is beyond rehabilitation. On May 7th, year 1980, Norris was sentenced to 45 years to life imprisonment with eligibility for parole in the year of 2010. Bittaker granted several death row interviews following the year of 1981's conviction. He was never expressed any remorse for his crimes, repeatedly stating the only remorse he felt he has been for the fact that him and Norris were arrested, thus ruining his whole life. He corresponded with numerous individuals, responding to letters he received with the nickname Pliers. Bittaker is referenced to one of the implements he and Norris had used to torture and murder their victims. Throughout the years, both investigators and psychologists have stated that Norris derived equally extreme gratification from domination, abuse, and torture inflicted upon victims as Bittaker. These respective parties have also harked toward Norris's extensive history of physical and sexual violence against women prior to his meeting of Bittaker. Norris initially became eligible for parole in the year of 2009. Norris declined to attend the parole hearing, thereby automatically deferring his parole eligibility for another 10 years. He was denied parole again in the year of 2019 and died while incarcerated earlier the following year. The audio cassette Whitaker and Norris created of themselves raping and torturing Ledford remains in possession of the FBI Academy. This recording is used to train and desensitize FBI agents to the law and raw reality of torture and murder. I hope you enjoy this unfortunate story. I'm Mr. Wade and Mrs. Crime. And once again, we bring it to you.